maybe not all palatable fruit, maybe some of them so super acidic that they're just used as condiments. But this is a spectacular looking fruit. Look at it. And they are used as a lemon condiment. They squeeze the juice on it. This is Aladoxia conferta, another one of these strange palms, swamp palms from Borneo. They use the fruits as a condiment, squeezing it just like we would as lemons. Here's another variety, a darker variety. This is a silica which was collected in Bali in the highlands. We're interested in this particularly because the silicas are also, for the most part, male and female plants. It means you need one of each in order to get fruit, except that the ones up in Bali seem to be self-fertile, so it's very interesting for growers, plus they take much cooler temperatures. This is a holy grail of the silicas. This is down on Jim West's farm, but unfortunately for him, he has only a male plant, so it's not producing much fruit. In order to get this, we thought we had to take a 5-day hike into some of the mountains in central Sarawak. Now I hear, for better or worse, that there is a logging road that will get us a lot closer. This right here is Nipa fruticosa. It is a swamp palm which produces this huge, ungainly looking mace itself. You'll see it here with our handy exhibitionist. And there it is on the ground again. And then the gall, they make sugar out of this, but they also use the edible nut inside of this massive segment. And there's Alicia, my daughter, showing off the bounty from Jim West's Silica ebulus collection. This right here, I don't remember it, I'm sorry. These are stems that they eat of many of the cane palms in Borneo, the hearts. And there's another silica which was called super sweet on the Indonesian border of Sarawak. Oh, you know, you guys perhaps have seen Fox News, Chris Killam. Has anyone seen Chris Killam? He's a friend of mine, and so we were going to try to partner up maybe and do television, except he doesn't want to share the spot, so I have to try to see if I can create something on my own. But this is what type of fare you have in Vanuatu, fruit bats. And so those are selling for 200 Vatu and 300 Vatu, about, what is 200 Vatu? $20? $20 and $30, I think, something like that. But then I ate mine in New Caledonia, and so here it was, after it comes out of the pressure cooker, I looked at it and said, and there was pre-cooking, but the lady assured me it was a long tradition. These are silkworms. You know, part of our aversion is synthetic, is artificial, because I was reading about unusual foods and fruits, and unusual foods in the United States take some unusual descriptions. It was back in the 1890s and early 1900s that lobsters were considered cruel and unusual punishment for prisoners in Boston. Not to be fed more than 1 or 2 a month, Tony, because otherwise it was cruel. I would love to be one of those prisoners now. All you can. These big sago grubs, revolting at first. I think you really even ate one. So
no, that's not the correct explanation. They stuffed one in my mouth. That's not correct.
There's the proof. No, they're delicious. They're fatty. You like to eat them when they're warm, though, because then they get kind of turn like little lard balls. You know this guy, Ron, Anthony Lamb. He's an extraordinary botanist. He's written descriptions and books for so many of the flora and the genera and families of Borneo. And here we're consulting with him at Natural History Books in Kota Kinabalu, Borneo. And this is a plantation. Of course, you know, they have the willow-beas and they have all this spectacular fruit, but cash commercial crops, rain. So here they're planting Piper nigrum. I mean, tear down the rainforest and let's plant something that doesn't belong here. But they don't know how to make real money. I'm still trying to teach them. The Piper family, Piperaceae, is extraordinary because it has, as it well demonstrates, huge spice potential, huge flavoring potential, huge aroma potential, huge perfume potential, and yet all of these species are basically unknown. So we really know a lot in our super modern era of great technology, and this is, yeah, put Nina Fedorov with me, guys. Okay. This is extraordinary. I won't tell the whole story in that one. Then we're in Forbiaceae. I did not know what this was. It was merely by a fluke that you get some identifications. I was looking through the book by Paul Noren, and Dennis, you'll know that little book, The 25 Most Useful Fruits of the Congo. and I was looking at a plant called Tetracarpinium coniferum, and I was trying to notice some things about it, and noticed that it had some flowers coming off, and I said, that looks awful familiar to this thing, because I had eaten this green, and it produces a fruit. Please go. This is the fruit. So, as you see, Tetracarpinium, 4 carpels or 4 seeds, and I started putting 2 to 2 together, and there's the flower coming out, which is mostly male flowers with just 1 female at the posterior point. It turns out it's a Plucanetsia, which is in the Sanchi-ichi nut family, which is one of the great oils of the world, up and coming. Turns out that's in the same family, so now I know it as Plucanetsia corniculata. Some of the Bornean rainforest. This right here, probably most of you have never heard of it. This is pit-pit. Pit-pit is a Saccharum edulis. What happens is the terminal flower shoot aborts. It never comes out of its sheath, which means they eat it. I don't think I have a proper picture to show you what's inside, but it's like a piece of cauliflower. Amazing and delicious. This is proof that mangroves are also edible. I forget the species here, but I ate these as well. Better when they're young and tender. This is not the red ball that you saw in the picture, but it's one of the pandanus. Pandanus are particularly interesting because I believe they have food potential. If we look at some of the islands in the South Pacific, they've taken relatively useless species, and over centuries or millennia or even more, they've selected edible varieties that have quite edible flesh on them. These are just a bunch of the pandanus. This is Beccaria alata, which is coliflorus, which is an amazing thing to see on the tree. There's a yellowish fruit. Go through some of these unusual fruits. This is Dialium indicum, perhaps. There's several Dialium species. It's a legume in the bean family, a big tree. They taste like tamarinds of sorts. This is Dicroides, Dicroides rostrata. Like those canarium nuts, those Chinese olives, you just put these in hot water and eat the flesh around the seed, which is kind of olive-like or kind of avocado-like. There's Dicroides expansa, identified for me by Ellen Carl. I sent pictures to him because I was stumped on that one. Xanthophyllum amina, which the rind is used as a saponiferous, as a soap, and the inside is a beautiful flesh which is completely edible. This has different descriptions in many of the works that I see. Some call it Plethiandra, others have other names for it. It's a tree from Central and South America which has basically gone all over the world because it has microscopic seeds, but a really nice fruit. This is Santorium borneensis, a very, very rare fruit in the jungles of Borneo. And now we come to some of the unknown nuts. You couldn't believe it that there's unknown nuts in the world. How expensive cashews are and all these other things. This is a species of Osteoides. I still don't know exactly what it is. I can't find any literature on it, but I mean they eat it all over in Sarawak. You'll see more here. There's the nut, and then when we open it up, there's the seed hull, and inside is the kernel, which is delicious. They boil it. This is spectacular. Sclerotocarpus borneensis, the garlic nut. One of a kind species in its genus. It's just a spectacularly bizarre nut. It has the aroma of garlic. This is called Castinopsis foxworthii, related to the other type of hazelnuts. And then these are the large diptocarps, which were actually the shoria butter. These were used for butter by a lot of the big companies. Pentaspadum malleae, another unknown nut in the Euphorbiaceae family, and the little orangutans who enjoy all of these things. Going down some of the tributaries, we're looking for fruits that are in the hot wetlands. This is Vitex triloba. That's in habitat. That's when it's pink, and you don't put it in your mouth because it has a terrible, terrible acritic property. Some of them cut or pickle or preserve the green fruit. So more of the jungle there. Now we're getting into bananas. This is my banana cue. So bananas. Why do I say that there's banana potential? Because the bananas we know are not self-propagative. Every banana you basically see in the world that has no seeds has been moved there by the hand of man. Because I have not seen any of them get out of the ground and run by themselves. And so what it means is even in the densest of jungles, when you come upon the domesticated banana, it's probably 99.999% sure that some man or woman sometime during history planted a banana plant in the close vicinity. We can imagine that they could creep with time a certain distance, but certainly not hundreds of kilometers. So the real story about bananas is there's about 120 species. Most of them, as we will see here, we'll start flying through this arena. How are we doing? I don't even know what picture. We're on 308 of 950, so we're doing good. Is this interesting?
Yeah.
Okay. This, so that is Musa borneensis. Here we're in a grove of Musa borneensis. Several different species we'll go through here quickly. Let's see. This is probably a new species, so I can't, oh no. This is Musa Sakayana? Sakayana, yes. It's a new species that was just recently discovered. And then this is a group called the Musa campestris group. There's several of them. Musa campestris, Mingbongensis, Musa campestris, campestris, and all of these buds are edible. The green fruits are edible, but they all have seeds in them too. And these are the male buds. So if you know a little bit about the structure of a banana flower, in the beginning are the female flowers. At the end are the male flowers. So when they start setting fruit, you have to have other bananas at different stages of development fruiting so the pollination occurs. And so that's what's happening. This is the smallest banana in the world, Musa beccarii variety Hotana, named after the Japanese scientist who discovered it. It's about 40 centimeters high. This is, what you want to look at here is the stalk, because it's an ebony black color. This is Musa textilis, found on the coat, on the flanks of Mount Kinabalu. Another Musa campestris. Musa monticula, growing in right near Mount Kinabalu. More of these, okay? All edible buds. The Iban people cook them and eat them as vegetables. They're non-acrid. So this is what the potential likes. There are about 6 breeders of bananas in the world, worth their salt. Blake, is that a lot?
No.
I mean, they say, well, there's 6 billion people, so why aren't more people interested in breeding bananas? I mean, there's people selling cell phones. I mean, so there has to be something interesting about it. It's a complicated task. Maybe accelerated breeding programs would be the point, Jim, but what we could create would be disease-resistant bananas that are seedless, that have polyploidy or triploidy, which are unique genetic terms describing the genetics of the plant. But with 120 different wild banana species, it seems to be of great potential to create a lot of new fruits. Imagine a purple striped banana in the market. So here we have Musa monticola next to Musa campestris libanensis. This is Musa hirta, which is a very unusual banana, which I am already dreaming of the potential for this. The fruit is of a transparent consistency like a kiwi, ripe kiwi fruit. And Ibans eat it both as a green vegetable, putting salt on it and just eating it whole, or as a ripe vegetable or a ripe fruit. And you can cook the bud head as well. And we can keep going through here. Okay, so this shows you what's happening. Lots of seeds. So the banana weed doesn't have seeds, but this is what wild bananas have. That's why they call them monkey bananas, because the monkeys play around and split the seeds up. Even though they are a useful nutrition of themselves, but they're hard and they need to be ground up into flours or whatever. These are all rare bananas. This is Musa lutea in Vietnam. Musa lutea here. There it is in Vietnam. They cook the bud head. This is Musa vunii, named after Vun Boon Ho. He said, I have a little banana, because it isn't really a really big banana. And then this is Musa borneensis. And now we're looking at some of the strange cultivars of bananas. This one right here is in Vanuatu. Irina thinks she's scary, that little girl. I thought she was gorgeous. There's what the banana looks like. It looks like a mango inside. Very, very beta-carotene rich flesh. And there it is. It's not a mango, it's a banana. Okay, and this is Ficus asperifolia. These are some of the fruits and vegetables I'll just go through because I think we're in Vanuatu here. And then now we're getting to Armenia. So there's the old Armenian churches date back to 301. The Caucasian, the Caucasus countryside, the traditions of dry fruit. So wherever you go in the world, you discover there's a lot to know and a lot that is being forgotten. That's the important point. Are you raising your hand?
Yeah, I'm
okay.
sorry to interrupt.
No, that's great.
Yeah, get in your way. So you showed a world of bananas there.
Yes.
And I think that's a really, really good example of one of the problems that consumers have, especially in the Western world. You know, and they all taste different. They're great, and I've had a number of different varieties myself. But when you get back here, you know, they only have the yellow ones that are X long and they have a perfect, you know, curl and blah, blah, blah. You know, how do you, you know, you go around and you collect these plants and you have this hope that people will kind of get beyond that short-sightedness. Is there anything that you can do to educate people, or is there something that
Yeah,
you
we have
personally
a
do?
strategy. The strategy is a rather perverse one. I'll try to explain why it's perverse, because you're talking about feeding the hungriest people in the world, but the way you do it is by getting to the richest. And so they don't want to do anything for people. They're not interested in helping people. I'm saying this explicatively and in a crude fashion for a reason. Because if they think they can get material gain, they're always interested. So where is the material gain with all these exotic things? What kind of people, what is Luke Rosen, what kind of guy is he? He's worth 600 million euros. Only thing he's interested is in money. I don't think he gives a damn about any fruit. So if he thinks there's a potential in it, he'll plant it. And I'll tell you a few stories about it. But it starts, as we've strangely found out, with top chefs. And then it trickles down to the bottom. Isn't that a perverse way of doing things? So we have these top chefs all over the world who are just raving to have the newest elite dish, right? They put this incredible fruit on the plate of some rich person, and then the person goes and tells their friends, oh, I had an exquisite durian from Borneo. And it was just the most marvelous and the rarest of fruits. And so you imagine what then people start talking about, then the secondary level chefs start trying to copy the top chef. Before long it's down at Burger King. Not really. So that's one mechanism. It's called tricking them, making them feel, you know, why do they wear a $25,000 watch? Because they want to be special. So if you can eat a fruit that has to be picked by hand and brought only to your table, then you feel really special. And these are people who spend 4,000 euro a night on a hotel room. You know, that's, no one, we don't think about that kind of stuff, but I discovered it by accident. You know, they're the kind of people who appreciate it because it's rare. So you tell them how rare it is and they love it even more. No one else can have this one. Okay, so these, and it's more serious than that, but I will say that is a proper perspective because the care part, it doesn't work. I mean, we all care. I think all of us care, but we don't feel that we are UNICEF either. We can't go out there and change all of the things we want. But there's mechanisms to do it, so there is a grand plan. That's what I've told Ron. There's a lot of people against this kind of strategy because they can't stop it. You know, they want to put everything in a nice little box and keep their little rewards. If you work in the academic community, you know exactly what this means. Those people are fighting for the grants every single year because that's how they sustain the academic world. And unfortunately, that doesn't do very much for too many people. I use a lot of those monographs, a lot of those research reports, but it's impractical. Okay, let's go through Armenia.
I'm sorry, I do have one thing to interject about when you brought up some of the top chefs.
Yes.
I trained the chef and worked with Wolfgang Puck and Julie Child when she was still alive, Russia Soul. However, that is absolutely true. When we used to get in some really unique product, Wolfgang Puck had at his fingertips a Learjet whenever he needed something
Thank you.
to be heard of somewhere else.
Yep.
May or may not have worked that evening, but sometimes you would get a thing. You had no idea what the hell we were putting on the plate, but it was just phenomenal. And then these people, exactly, they were paying exorbitant amounts of money for this plate of food that they had no idea what it was. But they remembered.
Okay, it's super cool. So it happened in Europe. Then there's this guy who got this vision, and he started, amassing the chefs around the table, and then it would be vying for who could have the rarest thing. So these guys are playing with spices that no one else has. We were in northern France, in a place called help me with the name.
It was near Motashar, but I don't.
Right next to. Okay, so anyway, there's a top Michelin chef. He was a 3-star chef.
Cayenne.
What?
Cayenne.
Yeah. So we went to his store. He wasn't there, but I left a message for him, and the next day he wrote me back. He wants to work with me because he wants all these rare spices. And it's not good just to be rare, it has to be only me. And there's a lot of those only me's, but what I'm doing, I'm like working like a parasite, getting them into his store, and then all the world's going to learn about it. Okay, these are interesting because they're pickles. The tradition of pickling has been perhaps revived. I think you have the book, Wild Fermentation. You have it. It's by Sonderkraut, or whatever his new name is. He's a wild guy who lives on a, what do they call them? Intentional communities. I guess this particular one is an intentional community in Tennessee, and he's a master of fermentation. And it turns out that there's a lot of traditional people in the Caucasus who still do. These are the Mongol people who live up in the highlands of Armenia, and they produce all of these incredible pickles. Umbellifers, the carrot family, some of them you don't want to play around with, but in the Caucasus, they eat probably 20 to 30 species on a regular basis, and they make incredible preserves of them. And these are just salty pickle type things. This is down in Nagorno-Karabakh, some of the old churches just for your viewing pleasure. And then hippophae. This is the sea buckthorn. Huge potential for the world. They should be raising it all over the northern parts of Canada and the United States because it's as hardy as can be. These is wild strands in Armenia. And then this, of course, is an American plant, the chokeberry or aronia. Here's a cultivated form of hippophae over at what's it, One World Nurseries up there with Jim. What's his name? Jim. He has a big, huge, unique fruit nursery up in Oregon. All I say is I'm not completely coherent. You have to understand, I flew from Amsterdam yesterday. I'm probably about 5 o'clock in the morning my time right now. But this right here is a wild species, a wild plant of Mescalis germanica, the medlar. And so you'll see the resultant fruits. They have to be bletted, which means they have to be frozen and allowed to basically soften up before they can be eaten. Amazing. I called Ron up. I was with Steve Fasciola, and I said, you cannot believe this place, Ron. This is the Garden of Eden. You could be walking along just little forest trails, and there would be so many different kinds of plants. The reason I remember your name, Lotus, is because of Diospyros lotus, which will come up here. I was astounded by this fruit tree that was just loaded with fruit, all wild. And these are the progenitors of so many of the stone fruit and so many of the pome fruit that we have today. Cucurbita maxima, my squash collections. Cucumis milo, some Uzbeki melons that are being sold on the side of the road. And this right here is Elagonius, the Russian olive complex. Here's the fruits of it. I mean, just fruit everywhere. Diospyros, the persimmons everywhere. And then all types of, we have in this one, Cornus moss, just berries here. And then there was, what else do they have there? They have, I thought there were 3 different things that she was offering. Maybe it's just the walnuts. Okay. Here's a wild Cornus moss, so just from the cultivated. There's Diospyros lotus. Beautiful plant. Look at this beautiful rubus species. I did not identify it, but it's big, huge segments. And then look at the dried fruit. Tradition of dried fruit all over Armenia. They do everything with it. This is Rosa spinosa, a pure black one. Why it's of interest to me is it seems to have huge quantities of anthocyanins in the relatively thin flesh. Again, a breeding program could enhance this as a super fruit with high antioxidant properties. So all of these, you keep talking potential. Oh, okay. Yes? Okay. Yes. So here's one of my little fruit collections. This is after 2 days of collecting in one area. So we have a couple, of course, the pyrus up there at the top, the pear is a domesticated one, and then we have a big domesticated medlar here. But the relatively unknown group of fruits would be the Crataegus, and then of course, I just showed you the wild medlar, the rosa. There's just dozens of species of rose, the Elagonus, you disappeared off that little plate there. And then we have our Cornus, the Cornus moss wild form, more pyrus species. There's like 60 species of pears in the Caucasus, and then a Crataegus, and then over there we have what we call the cran apples. Is that what we call them?
Crab apple?
Crab apples, yes, thank you. And then wild plums of all sorts. An amazingly diverse forest in the Caucasus region, the center of super biodiversity. And then these are Cucurbita maxima. Cucurbita maxima, the large ones, and these 2 in the center, and Cucurbita pepo there. The diversity of squash never ceases to amaze me. It's one of my big passions because they're coming from South America and Central America originally, and they've spread all over the world and taken on their myriad of forms. Here's after cleaning the seeds out. And then here's a variety which was down in a place called Arani, Armenia. We'll go through this quick. Here we're back to Ficus bipunctatum, which is in Bali. There's the close-up of the fruit. This is a fig which is partially edible. I mean, it's not poisonous by any means, but just partially palatable. And this is a Diospyros, which of course the word, Lotus, this is important for you. Diospyros is Dio, God, and Pyrus, the pair of the gods. Very good. And then some other figs just off the trees. Most of these are cooked and prepared in stewed form in the jungle by the jungle people. And this is a piper vine. Now we're in to New Guinea. So this is not Papua New Guinea. You remember the island of New Guinea is cut into two pieces. We flew in to a place called, what is it called? Jayapura. Oh, it's a terrible place. Jayapura is a terrible place. In fact, that crazy guy that I had holding things, we sent him there as our so-called lead man. Because sometimes I do this, you know, when I have my daughter, we don't want to go in a dangerous place, so we sent him there to see how dangerous it was. He lived for 4 days, so we decided we could go in. And so it turns out that we got in, and one of the things that's romantic about an ethnobotanist, and I did not claim myself to be an ethnobotanist, but Ron appropriately calls me one, and I do essentially feel to be one. I have people who still daunt me by their propensity to organize education and intellect and understanding. And what I mean by this is a prominent ethnobotanist in Italy. I asked him if I could give speeches at the university. He says only qualified academics can do this. What I believe is that after he saw a few of these things through his colleagues, he didn't want me to come and compete with him, because no one can teach me this. There's not a university where you can learn this type of thing. So without being facetious, I exactly answer in that fashion. No university can teach me. Trial and error. He still lived on this one too. We were trying to kill him. So it's a piper species. We don't know what it is, but it tastes like a carrot in that form when it's still unripe. It's crunchy. This right here is Musa piclei, another wild banana. Another Musa piclei. This is more of the Hornstedia. And there's the fruit. So when you take the segments out and you peel off that thin layer, then you have these segments here, which I said were reminiscent of eating tangerine segments. Completely palatable. Another Musa species in the jungle. Some of these are unidentified. That's what we're going through. So how do we do this? Because lots of snakes. I'm afraid of snakes. It's one of my fears. So I always have people who supposedly know the area better than me. So you have like 4 people walk ahead of you. So they live there. They walk around barefoot. I'm sorry, I can't change the way they live. And they walk for miles and miles through the stuff. So then I put myself, and then I put another person, then I put my daughter. So by the time 6 people go by, we should clear it out for her, because she's the important one. And not him, he's first. This species right here this is a liquala, but it may not even be identified yet. So for any of those of you who are aficionados of palm trees, this is how we get into places like this. We flew in. The goal of this mission was to find Musa ingens, the largest herbaceous plant in the world. You'll see it here after a few. So we hiked in 25 kilometers into this 85, 95 degree, 100% humidity jungle. So we landed at an airstrip. We had to ford this river here. And then this is where we camped at night the first time with all the guys. And this is an amazing man. So when I flew into, I was in Bali. It was about 2 o'clock in the morning. We were waiting for our flight to go to West Irian, or to West Papua. And this guy comes in all bright and cheery with his pretty wife. And I looked at him, I said, and he's talking real nice, I said, missionaries. And sure enough, he was a missionary, and he took us into his loving home. He fed us, he gave us all the ways, and he was our main man. So I didn't need the guy we sent in, because he knew it. He grew up there. He was 2 years old when he was adopted. He's a jungle man as good as any of those. He's 62 years old, and he walked 25 kilometers in, 25 kilometers out, and didn't stop an ounce. Amazing man, John Cutts. And here's what we were looking for. So this is the stalk, the largest herbaceous plant in the world, Musa ingens. 15 meters up to the leaf petioles. And so what we were looking for, well, seeds, of course. In this particular case, we had to go up this stream because it was the best way to get up, and you'll see it. So we climbed up that, and there's where we get up. And then, so where do they grow? Well, because they're a particularly fragile plant, when you imagine this big, huge, like corn stalk that's 45 feet tall, they can't take wind, so they only grow in protected, sheltered little ravines. And this is where we had to go to find them. And you know, when we're looking for things, that's part of the sleuthing. You ask questions. Now, we didn't have the facility talk with these people, so we had John Cutts translating. Do you know where the big banana is? And so, you know, you can think, what does that come out to? Translation, it gives you some unusual things. And so, one of my best stories of humiliation is looking for Oaxacan green corn. Now, this is actually a corn kernel that is green. But I was down in Oaxaca in this really remote village of San Tomaso La Chugiri, and I was asking for the green corn, and the lady said, we have it. And I thought, oh, 3 years searching is finally rewarded. So she walked us up this path, drove us up there as we followed her. She takes us to the field, and she says, it's all green. It was green, and I just, damn, I said, oh boy. So that's what happened. But, so we're leery of these guys and their big banana, and then so we get up there, we get to the little hut, we walk another hour and a half. It's now getting close to around 2:30 in the afternoon. Sun falls at 6 in the tropics, dead center. So we only have a little while to get in and get out, and we had just done the 25-kilometer hike to get in. So we had to get up there that day and get back out. So I'm asking my daughter, I said, do you think we're going to find it? And she says, what can we do, Dad? Let's follow him. So finally, we get up there, and the guy goes, I look at it, and I said, oh my gosh, it was just like amazing. I just fell down, and just, it was, you know, to see something like this, very few people in the world have ever seen it. So this is on the way. Now, what is this? This is another pandanus, but unlike the other pandanus, somebody put the effort in, the creativity, the selection to choose it, because this is a wild one, and this is a selected one. This is called Pandanus conoideus, and they actually use this as a sauce. And how does it happen? They take these big red things, keep going, Arena, please. There it is right there. You can see the little segments are starting to peel off of that. These are all clonal. All of these are propagated not by seed, but by cuttings of the mother plant. So they produce fruit. All that is taken off, all those little segments. There's thousands of little segments on there. They put it in a bowl. They cook it over heat. It turns into what looks like tomato paste or ketchup. And then they strain the seeds out of it with fibrous little seed core. And then they use that to put it on an oily preparation in all their mills, on all their starchy, you know, yams and stuff. So it's a primal cause of life in these jungle villages in West Area. This is called Musa schizocarpica, and the reason why, maybe we have a picture. No, we don't have a picture. Schizocarpica means it explodes once the fruit ripens. There's about 3 or 4 species that the pill actually pills back on it, and this is one of them. Little curculiid weevil beetle, and there's the picture everyone wants to know. That is a pandanus. It's not edible, but it sure gets attention because no one knows what it is. It was found in the jungles in Borneo. And by the way, this expedition we did, there's no less than 3 or 4 plant species we found on this trip, which are, as far as we can identify now with experts, are new to science. So everywhere you go in these jungles, it's that kind of discovery. This is another Musa piclei. This is finding a new species of Edlingera, so I'm over there in contemplation. This is pulling up the fruit. I showed this to a friend of mine who's a director of the Norwegian Botanical Garden in Oslo. There's the underleaf of the leaf to show him. He said, new species, 100%. This is Cyperaceae in the Cyperaceae, what do you call those? Cyperaceae.
Nutsedge?
Rushes?
Sedges.
Sedges, exactly. Thank you. Okay. This is an unidentified new species of banana. Okay. Man, we're almost there. How are we doing on time? We're 8 o'clock.
Keep going.
Just keep going? Okay, good. Okay, this is going through the trail here to New Guinea, and what happens is they don't build bridges here, they just chop down a tree. So they lop a tree, and you see I have a pole, because that's about 5 meters, about 15 feet, or no, about, sometimes, not 5 meters, yeah, 15 feet. It's about 15 feet deep, so that's slippery and everything, and so we have these big, huge poles. They're actually surveying rods, so I use these as a multi-purpose thing for chasing snakes away, for climbing, for walking, for cutting fruit down. And I tell my daughter, you have to use your pole. And so, okay, go back to that. That's important because they're doing their, here we didn't know if it was the end of us or the end of the trail or whatever, so they start pulling out the bow and arrows. And okay, what's going on here? And so they're practicing. So sure enough, about 50 yards away, there's a tree filled with arrows, and this is where the guys mark their tree. And so they show how good they are. And so this is a little village, no electricity, no anything. It's just in the middle of I mean, hundreds of miles from anywhere. Not even, this is what we're flying over. So, I mean, this is one of the last pristine areas on Earth. The Chinese would love to use this. They would love to get in there and cut the wood out. They promised the governor of West Papua that they'll give him anything he wants. He doesn't want to. He's actually saying, he said, what can we do for our people? What can we do that won't hurt them? But look at this, pristine except for a little bit of traditional settlements along the river, filled with crocodiles, by the way. So this is a view out of the plane. I mean, just astounds the soul. The scenery. Of course, if we landed there unexpectedly, I don't know where and how we would get out because it's filled with everything. Now we're in Chile. So now we've come down to the domestication of Putia ficus indicum. Really beautiful ones down there, Dennis. Hubbard squash down in southern Chile. This is one that weighs about 20 kilos. Huge, thick meat. Of course, this is one of the epicenters of diversity for these. This is right after the big quake, which was in central Chile. Irina was there. We were all there right after this. Not during. This is Lapageria rosea. It's, for chefs, amazing because the flower is completely edible, just like lettuce. The fruit has very unusual flavor, but is edible as well. It's the national flower of Chile. More Hubbards. Okay, this is Guavinia avellana, which is a spectacular plant in the Proteaceae, so it's related to the proteas. And it's a nut which is delectable and now has been picked up by the New Zealanders. They're now going to grow it commercially in New Zealand. There's the plant right there. And this is what kind of area we're in, basically a temperate climate. Again, filled with all kinds of biodiversity, all types of spectacular fruits. This is Umni molii. They call it the, what do they call it? The Chilean guava. There it is right there. More. These are the species of Gunera. This is Gunera scabosa. This is the species of Gaultheria, the same family as the wintergreens. There's Mount Osorno, which we went to collect on. This is Irina suffering from a high altitude. These are the berberis species, which are known as the cataphrase, which are all over this area. There's a lot of endemic berberis species. More. I found 3 of them in one place. This is some down in the kind of the fjord areas. Keep going. This right here is Carica pubescens, and you'll see the fruit coming up here, more hybrid. They raise these commercially in Chile. They cook them and they use them as a fruit component. This is a very unusual species. This would grow here. By the way, I understand that Jim asked me through Ron to kind of know for the fruit people what kind of things would grow here, and I really haven't said much about it. Quite a few of those fruits. Obviously, a lot of stuff from Armenia would grow here, because there are some warmer zones in Armenia. This right here, Gomartega keuli, definitely needs to be grown here. It's an extremely, extremely rare fruit that has a taste all of its own. There's the fruit. The ripe fruit is next, I believe. Yeah, so there's the ripe fruit. You can see it's about 1.5 inches, 2 inches. There's the seed right there, and then down at the bottom we have Geoffreya decorticans, which I'll talk about too.
What's that fruit called again?
The Gomortega, Gomortega, Gomortega keulea, Keule, and it's named after Martin Gomez, Martin Gomartega, who was the director of the Madrid Botanical Garden. It's monotypic genus, only species in this family, Gomartegaceae. And this is Lardizabala. Yes?
I just want to say, if anybody wants seeds of those, there's Chile Flora. There's a website that sells a lot of those Chilean plants.
Have you ever germinated them?
No, I've had them in pots for like 2 years, still haven't gotten germination, but I got my hopes up.
There's a technique, there's actually, pre-soaking them seems to work. I mean, like soaking them for 2 weeks or even a month. There was a monograph by the Chilean Academy of Horticulture that talks about germinating them that I studied, but because they have 2 to 3 embryos in them, up to 4 embryos. This is Lardizabala. Lardizabala, am I saying that right, Dennis? You know what it is? It's related to Acacia, but it's endemic to Chile. Those are male-flowers. Identifying the fruit, there's the male-flowers. It kind of looks like a finger, kind of a soft fruit. That would grow here quite well. There's more of the flower buds, not fruits. This is Drimnus winteri. In fact, we're going to hear more about this, but this plant also occurs on the Robinson Crusoe Islands, and it was said that Alex Selkirk used this as a condiment, as a type of spice during his 4-year seizure on those islands. And then this is another topic. I think this is my cue that I'm going to talk about cactus. And I think a few of you were here when I had this brief encounter of a strange sort 2 or 3 months ago when we started in, and Dennis had just finished up talking about cacti. Cacti to me are the vast unknown frontier. What we can do by breeding and by selection is probably more promising than any other fruit for the deserts of the world. So this right here is called Eulychnia acida. We'll keep going here quickly. There's the fruit, and then they'll show size to a scale right here. That's how big it is. It's quite acidic, but that doesn't mean that it wouldn't be able to be sweetened up with the proper breeding. So I mean, it's already delectable. I mean, although it's acidic, you would probably put more salt or sugar on it to flavor one way or the other. Keep going, and here's just the basic climate. So extremely arid. There's 2 nice fruits. And then this is the zone around it. So you can see it's as dry as can be. This is Geoffroy decorticans. And there's the fruit. It's a wonderful legume for dry areas that get a little bit cold in the winter. I think that the Boyce Thompson Arboretum actually has those growing there. And this is what they do with it. Irina, can you explain the process, seeing she explained it to you, what they do?
They make a syrup out of it, which they use medicinally. They treat colds with it. But the plant is also very useful if you want to use it in desserts. And actually, we found out about it in Atacama from a French lady who had moved there. And she was the one that repopularized it because the locals had forgotten it. So by bringing commerce, this is another example of how you popularize one of these things. She had found that tourists were interested in trying more of the local foods rather than having something that they could eat at home. So she came up with the idea of investigating traditional crops, and this was one of them. So instead of only using it medicinally, as she had been explained, she started adding it to ice cream and juices, etc., etc., etc.
Do they ever eat it fresh?
Yeah, so what happens here?
You can, because it dries, right? It dries.
Yes,
up
it
and-
dries literally in the aridity of the place. Now, I don't know how
We
this
found
happens
them
to
in
us.
very dry state, so I couldn't exactly explain what the taste is, but I assume you can eat it fresh, yes. Should we continue?
Yes, so it is true. One of the things that we have to imagine is when foreigners go into a place and show interest in an old crop or one that has been left as, you know, old and no good, it can spark a rebirth of interest. And this happens all over the world. So it's strange to me, being this kind of explorer dude, that when I go into a place, they think it's nothing, but as soon as I show up, they start believing that it's something. It has a strange, catalyzing effect on people. It happens with all kinds of things. There was a woman in Mexico who had a big pile of goat manure, and it had probably piled up for 20 years, and no one had done anything. She just piled it in the road, and when I came up with my wheelbarrow and started digging it off, she decided it must be worth something, so then she wanted to protect it. But that's how it is all over the world. So this is a long, elongated variety that I found. I'd love to get graphic material of this. Again, going through the cactus quickly, we're going to see all kinds. This is brown Aegean candelabra at 2,700 meters in Atacama Desert. Go back, please. The plants are so disparate because of the aridity of the zone. You see virtually nothing grows there, but yet this produces large, delectable fruits. Different types of columnar cactus of various sizes. Columnar cactus have huge potential for fruit production, and it's now starting to take off even in Mexico and South America. This right here is Pycnantha. It's not an edible plant, but it's just spectacular to see because it's not a moss. It's actually composed of thousands of little rosettes that are braving 4,500 meters here in the Chilean Andes. This was a part of exploration to find a group of plants related to the pineapple called Puya. This is called Puya yakispala. Now, I had only seen a monograph on this, so when Irina and I went in search of it, we were driving around the mountain roads for days, and finally we came to this one near Santa Victoria in the Jujuy province in northern Argentina. And I saw the stalk from the road, but you see way down there, and I just started screaming and cheering, and got up there, and you see the result. I mean, it's spectacular, what they call it, they call them strobilliformis flower stalks, because it's like a big strobilliform. And there's the next one. And so we spent 3 days trying to get evidence from asking hundreds and hundreds of people about this. It's called Puya Webriana. I think you're the first people who've ever seen this in a picture form. I mean, other than a few other people have shown, because there are no pictures of it. And so when we saw this at 4,300 meters, I screamed so much she was sleeping in the car. She thought we were going over the cliff, and she got really mad at me, but I mean, look at it. It's astounding. And then this is the type of scenery you get to see when you're driving to find it in these areas in northern Argentina. And there's what happens. So go back to that. That's 4,600 meters, and that's a border post. And so people are like passing out because it's such thin air. And of course, she was real sick, so there she is on oxygen. And then these are cacti growing at around 4,000 meters. These are called Meguinopsis. They have edible fruit. Yeah, you can just pull them out there before they dehisce. And I think I even cut one. Yeah, this is more of the scenery of the cacti. That's Argentina. Let's see, do I have a fruit? There's lots of edible cacti fruit. Almost all of them are edible, not all palatable, but all with potential. And this is another journey. So this is my cue for this. This is going to the Juan Fernandez Islands, they're known as the Robinson Crusoe Islands. It's the
This might be a good time to take a
break. Okay, good.
And we have lemonade, and Frank Papillon brought in a whole bunch of avocado guacamole and citrus and whatnot. So if we want to take like a 15-minute
That sounds
break,
great.
then,
Thank you, everyone.